Good morning, everyone. Good morning to those of you joining us here this morning online. My name is John. Welcome to our Life of Learning Sunday class with Guy Finley. We're glad that you joined us this morning. If you're new, our agenda this morning is one in which in a moment Guy will give a 60-minute talk on the topic that he's chosen to share with us today. Then afterwards, we'll take a short break and then come back for an open discussion with the people here in the room, of my fellow students, and those of you online. And the discussion and what we share always has one purpose and also one gift. And that purpose and gift is it allows us to perhaps more deeply understand, more clearly see how the material that Guy presents to us is applicable and practical and present in our life. Before class, students were speaking, and all of the students were talking about a particular exercise that Guy gave in which that was true, and that is always true with the material that Guy presents. So, hope you'll stay for the entire broadcast if you can, and if you can't, this is being videotaped and it will be archived in all of our various platforms as well, so you can come back and watch it at your convenience. For the students in the room, if you have a cell phone, just please check to make sure you've turned it off, and we will get started with today's class. I'll read the topic for this morning and the key lesson that Guy wrote. Our topic is realize the one great lesson at the heart of self-liberation. And here is the key lesson. United we see and are free. Divided we struggle and fail.
And fall.
United we see and are free. Divided we struggle and fall.
Good morning, you handsome group of people, you. I was told I have to be friendlier. So that's the end of my friendliness. I take what you can get, you know. We're going to go on a fascinating journey together this morning, or whenever it is that you are joining us. And it will be in seemingly three separate parts. But just like the organs of the body that seem separate are unified by a greater holiness that ensures they operate and keep in place that which can instrument what is holy, so do these three sections of our study today work together to show you something greater than the human mind as a rule can see. That means that you have to listen even when it seems like you don't understand certain parts of it. If you'll just let everything move into and through you, you'll begin to understand why it is, and much to the heart of what we're going to look at today. Why is it that with all of your struggle, all the things that you are called to duty to do every single day, why is it that so little of your day-to-day experience actually changes? Circumstances change because you see to it through all that you struggle with to give yourself reasons, explanations for why that suffering is there. But when you examine it closely, you can see that whatever it is that's going on, it reoccurs and reoccurs and reoccurs. It just keeps going on. Does it not? Out loud, please. What is this experience that regardless how I paint it, regardless where I put it, no matter how I explain it to myself, there's still fear, and there's still anger, and there's still anxiety, and there's still this dread of life, this incessant wish that things weren't the way they were, and then the subsequent, how do I fix this? And then all of the doing that brings you right back to where you started again, only not noticing by and large that you're right back where you started from. Until at a certain age it becomes inescapable, and then cynicism slips in, and that becomes the new fulcrum. Does it not? So we're going to look at this idea of what free will is. Something that very few people want to tackle because almost no one understands what free will actually is. We're going to look at this idea of what it means that the will of heaven should be done in the will of earth, and how that relates to the idea of free will. And then, when all is said and done, we're going to look at something through a scientific eye. I know some of you love science. I'll try to keep you awake by raising my voice as often as possible in a friendly way. So if you're ready, you need to shake yourself awake several times, especially at the start of this. No one in your whole life, in fact, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if you've even ever read it someplace, albeit in parables. There is no action that we take, not one, no thought, no reaction that doesn't begin with an impulse of some kind born of an unseen set of forces that produce it. Every impulse, every thought, every reaction begins in a place that we don't see, that we don't know, and that comes into us. And when those energies come into us in the form of whatever the moment is manifesting, every moment's manifestation is a collection of energies in certain shapes, forms, energies that proceed to enter into our awareness, our experience of them. And it is that experience of all of these forces that produce the thoughts and reactions that follow. Everybody understand that? Now, it almost can't be proven, but I've read enough science on it now that I can state, not just from what I've read, but from my own understanding, that we never consciously are aware of any particular stimulus until about a half a second after that stimulus. Now let's go slow. So that in comes an energy. I don't know that anything has touched me, moved me, until about a half a second after it's done that. And further, I don't know that whatever it is that reacts to what has been touched still follows behind that, so that all of my explanations, everything that I rationalize about why I am doing what I'm doing, is actually an illusion. Because if that energy comes in and causes this stirring inside of myself, and then something interprets the stirring and then tells me what I must do in order to bring an end to the stirring I don't want, am I actually there, the one who's receiving the stirring, or am I an after effect of that moment? I can't tell you how profound it is for you to even consider that. Because you're so sure. Are you not? I this, they that, I and they being the same sense of self as a response to a stimulation that came in and brought up out of that consciousness that I. That I that is brought up by the stimulation is not the stimulation that brings it up. It belongs to a completely different order of being. So that we are forever in a place where first, something causes a disturbance, then I become aware of the reaction to that disturbance. My awareness of that disturbance is not the awareness of the actual disturbance. My awareness of what has moved through me is analyzed by a mind that has moved through, and then it tells me, look what happened. Look what this experience is. Do you see how what they said has brought this up in you? And then all of my doing, everything that I plan, follows whatever has perturbed me, so that everything about my attention moves outside of myself, believing that the actions that I choose to take are actually my actions when I wasn't even there when that action was prescribed. I identify with the action that follows the disturbance and believe that the identification with the sensation is in fact who I am. Everybody, can you grasp some of that? This means that all of my choices, and what are choices born out of? Thoughts and reactions about a disturbance. All of the choices, all of the thoughts that come to me, these choices are illusory. I'm explaining to you why nothing changes. You can argue that they do if you want, and then 20 years from now, if I'm still alive, you can come back and listen. You make choices all day long. You're never not in a choice-making machine. Some great salami slicer called this self, putting out answers in some kind of bread that you can eat and then think to yourself, I'm nourished and understand now what I have to do with my pain. These choices are after the fact rationalizations. These choices are after the fact rationalizations. Now, experience proves that if you can move that facilely in listening to me. I make 1,000 different choices based on what my mind tells me has happened, and the choices are all supposed to deal with what took place so I don't have to go through that again. But I do go through that again, don't I? The same machination, the same thoughts and feelings grinding through every time a certain set of stimulations take place. And by and large, the more I try to escape the stimulation that produces this sense of self, this experience that I don't want, the more I try to escape it, the more I find I'm confined by the choices I make, because there's only so many choices you can make. How many people can you get mad at all day long? Chris? What this means is that nothing that we do to change the condition blamed for the experience of those moments comes from our will. It comes from the will of whatever that consciousness is, that level of understanding, whatever that is, that's where that will comes from, because as that consciousness is stirred by these infinite intersections of various forces, what we call life, we don't really see it. You and I are like, dum. We look out, we see one thing. Oh, look at that. We don't see everything that unfolds. We see what this mind sees as necessary to explain to itself the experience it's having of that moment. Yes? This is where I said it's going to get tough. Well, that means that nothing I'm choosing to do is my will. Well, how can it be my will? Would you will yourself into a corner? Would you? Would you will yourself into another argument? Would you will yourself into resenting someone for as long as you're in a body? Would you? Well, how many of you are doing that? Would you will yourself into a constant state of fear anytime some sense of security, incidentally, that you willed into existence? Would you will into existence a security that's constantly threatened? It must be, I don't understand what security is. Mustn't that be? But that's my will. All I know is when anything threatens what I think I need and have to have, anything threatens that, I know exactly what to do. I know of the choices because they're given to me, and the choices that are given to me belong to the nature that was threatened. So how can a nature that lives in fear ever have any will of its own other than to constantly reoccur and create the illusion in that nature that I somehow am separate from these problems that my sharp mind is finally solving? Do you see? Please, this is what I call something I don't want to know. I mean, how do let's just assume for a split second that some of what I'm saying is getting through to you. I mean, it does explain a lot. My will runs in circles. It's constantly a horizontal affair, passing in time, exercised by events that I see as coming at me. And then everything I try to figure out to do to deal with what's coming at me, I take from the past because that's the only place that this will has answers it can call on. And so I constantly meet the moment with the past and then wonder why I don't get past those moments in my life. Because that consciousness can't. You can't serve two masters. If you have will, you're serving master. Are you not serving a master? You can't serve two masters. Why? You'll love one and despise the other. So why would I ever serve a master, in this instance, desire? Why would I ever serve desire if I knew that every time I serve it, the very service of what I want is bringing me what I don't want downstream? I would never do it. So that this sense of self brought up in that moment, can you come into your body and see how many times this morning alone? Like I was working early this morning and Patricia came down, and the minute I heard her come down, there's a reaction, because the reaction is I'm working on something, I'm in a line, I'm not ready. Which is one of my reactions all the time. I'm never ready. Not ever ready, never ready. But I'm ever ready to get never ready and upset with anything that disturbs where I am. But let's say for a moment I don't see that disturbance, what the experience is, and everything that it wills, which is what? To blame, to push off, to come up with excuses, all of that will. What if I actually see none of that is my will, but it is born out of a level of consciousness that creates the conditions that then it says it knows how to solve? What do you think happens to a man or a woman who begins to understand even a little bit of what I'm saying? What we call our awareness, the experience of some moment that follows the reaction that creates it. What we call our awareness, the experience of some moment that follows the reaction that creates it. What is my experience moment to moment other than my experience of a reaction? Isn't that what I'm aware of? Isn't that my experience? When I react, yes or no? So here's this reaction that I call my experience, and out of that reaction I call my experience comes all of the choices that I believe I must make in order to resolve whatever that reaction points to as a problem or a pain, which means that everything I am choosing to do is actually a part of the consciousness that has had that reaction and cannot, under any circumstances, liberate me from reoccurring as the eye of that storm. It's impossible. It's built into it. Your choices to escape your suffering are the continuation of the consciousness that suffers itself, not knowing it is itself that it suffers. Now you see that a little bit or you don't. I'm going to help you see it in a dramatic way with something practical, which is always a challenge to try to open up human consciousness so that we can look in it. If it's true, what I've described, that means the actions that we take, the things we choose to do, belongs to a nature that only knows itself as an effect of the forces that converge to create it. I'll say it again. What we choose to do belongs to a nature that only knows itself as an effect of the forces that converge together to produce that momentary sense of I. Yes? Now, if that's true, and I can hope that you are at least being able to marry some experience with this, it begs us to ask a very shocking question. Whose will are we serving when everything we do to deal with our experience is coming to us from a nature that only has a certain set of experiences to call on? Whose will am I serving? Isn't it clear to you, especially when something challenges what you want, isn't it clear to you what your will is? And how is that will mostly expressed? In joy? How is that will expressed mostly? Through resistance. Fascinating, said Spock. Fascinating. Most of my will that I'm aware of when I'm not trying to escape something that I think I didn't will is in a form of resistance. So that then everything that I do think I will to change what the problem is in my life then becomes the source of the next thing that I resist. Does it not? So does that make sense to you, that I'm in a constant state of willing that things shouldn't be the way they are? Because what I believe is I'm willing how they should be. Do you not? Because how do I imagine, I gave the word away, how do I know what to will? I know to will what I imagine is the answer to something unimaginable that happened to me a few moments ago. So where's free will? Where's free will? Just don't get too edgy. Where's free will? The choice that is always present, and there is always, with every disturbance, it is inherent in the very relationship between active and passive forces, and in the expression of what those forces bring forth when they come together. There is always a certain kind of choice. The problem is that as we are, the choices we make are predicated on what the experience, the conditioned experience we have of all things similar to those moments. The choices we are proffered come to us from the consciousness that tries to analyze why it's going through what it's going through, and then can only ask itself, what do I choose here? And then it gives itself the answer time and time again, slightly dressed differently, and yet it's always the same answer because it's coming from the same level of consciousness. That's recurrence. Where we are free, where our will is free, is in the one place that no one can imagine, and by the way, that no one wants to imagine. You are free to choose who and what you serve, and that is your only free will. That is the only free will. What will I serve in this moment? Who do I serve in this moment? I've just spent 12, 14 minutes explaining to you who it is that I serve in unwanted moments, haven't I? And in the strangest paradox, I serve the very nature that's creating the need to escape the nature that created the experience, because it just keeps doing it. Same choices, dressed differently. Go here, do this, get that, get away, whatever it is, that's the answer. And then I find out I didn't get anywhere. I did get older. I have less energy to be able to do what I need to do with my energy, because it's squandered like the prodigal son in an endless array of plans that produce nothing but the next moment where I have nothing to eat but corn husks. Who we will serve tells the tale. And why does it tell the tale? I want to blend all this together for you. Take a nice deep breath. Believe it or not, Rumi helps us understand that. He says, lo, meaning uh-oh. That was the word for uh-oh back in the day. Lo, look at that. Lo, for I to myself am unknown. Lo, for I to myself am unknown. Now, in God's name, what must I do? Lo, I don't know who I am. Uh-oh, what should I do? In other words, how can I know what to do when I don't know who I am? How can I know what to do when I don't know who I am? Because who you are presently is always telling you what to do, isn't it? And I just tried to show you that the I is a hallucination of an unconscious nature that has to have something to dress the experience of itself in that moment. It has the experience, then it creates I who experiences. It has the experience. Then in a divided way, it creates I, the one who identifies, obviously with whatever I've named as being the source of that experience, as the source of the suffering, if that's what the moment holds. Please. Lo, for I to myself am unknown. Now in God's name, what must I do? How many people do you think understand that? Holy Mother of Pearl. If I don't know who I am, how can I know what to do? I can't know what to do if I don't know who I am. But something's always telling me who I am. Isn't that the bottom line? Every moment produces an experience. Every experience is conditioned in terms of the way in which I react to it. The reaction always follows the advent of the forces. And then it says, here's who you are. And inseparable from who it tells me I am is what I must do to ensure that who I am isn't messed with anymore. Am I going too fast? Confounding the question is that we have fallen into a place, literally, not in a place physically, fallen into a level of consciousness where whatever the temporary identity is at that moment, whatever that is, that's where we derive our experience from. You think you're experiencing the moment. You're not experiencing the moment. You're experiencing what that nature has identified within the content of itself, and it just throws that color all over that moment. It says, look at that. Are you able to see it? I'm going to get a sign that says, big transition. And then maybe one that says applause. And maybe even one that says, take that look off of your face now. So we've been looking at what we call the experience of our life. And how every experience, in quotes, that I have really is nothing other than a certain level of consciousness that after it has been stirred into an awareness of itself, after it has been stirred, active and passive forces, when they meet, create something that reconciles them. That reconciling force is inseparable from the awareness of both at the same time. After that takes place, then I know. I'm there. I know exactly what's wrong with you because I see you in that light. I know what's wrong with the world because I see it in that light. Now, how many of you think that you see pretty much everything in the proper light? Raise your hands, get them up. Yeah. Now, so if you see things in the light and I see things in the light, why do we fight? Is there a fight amongst light? Well, where's the fight? Amongst human beings who see everything in the light that they cast and that they call themselves. Without knowing, all they're looking at is a particular aspect, a particular color of an unconscious nature revealed for a moment by the event. and that they don't know what to do with, so they paint it the color it needs to be, so now they know exactly where it goes in the room. Please? So if we understand that, can you begin to understand that you always know what your experience is, don't you? Just like that. Not quite like that, but almost like that. What's the nature of our experience of this life? What's the real nature of experience? See, we're experience creators instead of being a creation of experience. All the time creating experience. You don't see it because you think when you are reacting to some condition, you believe that what you're doing is just making sure that the experience you want and came into that moment with isn't threatened by whatever it is that's following you now. So I create experience for myself. That's what a divided mind is. A divided mind is a mind that never stops creating experience for itself, and then believing that it's actually in charge of the experience that it just had, that it didn't want, or that it wants more of, and so it simply creates a way to get more or to get less. It creates want and not want. That's what it does. And then I am inseparable from what I want or don't want. I serve two masters, single self, two masters, and then I suffer because no matter what it is that I create for myself is going to run into something that challenges that creation, because all I've created is something imagined that then has to be protected endlessly. I hope you'll go back and listen to this talk. I'm giving you so much. So what is the nature of our experience? We take a nice deep breath, to Isaiah, Old Testament. He says, it's written, "You are my witnesses, says the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that you may know and believe me and understand that I am he." You are my witnesses. You are my witnesses. You are the witness of I am. You are the witness of all I am. And all I am is before, now, and after, and evermore. You are witness to that. My servant, whom I've chosen to be a witness. A servant whom I have chosen to be a witness. Now, most of us have a lot of problem with this idea. One thing's got the word Lord in it and all the rest of that. But the bottom line is, please, and I'm asking you to see it, what are you a witness of every day? What are you the witness of every day? My experience. And if you've understood anything I've said, the me that is the witness of my experience isn't me. The I that just says that happened isn't the I that just happened to. It's the I that followed a happening and then laid claim to it so it could get away from what it wants or get more of what will protect it from what it doesn't. Sometimes it's hard to talk to y'all. It is. I can only hope that you go to a doctor and he gives you a prescription, you walk out the door, you look inside, you take a little sip out of the bottle, you don't like it, and you toss the bottle. You mustn't toss what you're being told. You must let yourself see whether or not it's true. Nothing I'm saying to you is untrue, but it's up to you to discover the truth of it. I can't do that for you. How many times do you want to wrestle in your own bed with your own mind? What do you think's going on when you're struggling with thoughts, with relationship problems, with the world that it is? What do you think you're struggling with? Do you really think you're struggling with that person? Do you really think you're struggling with that problem? No. This consciousness is struggling with its own projection that it then resists or embraces and says, I must do something about that situation. And that situation doesn't exist apart from the consciousness that sees and colors the moment that way, so that then it can be the painter or the one who removes the colors it doesn't like from that moment of life. Two friends walking along. Transition. Can I help you see something? Frank and Richard. And they're walking along. It's early morning light. They get up. Sun is just 30 degrees above the horizon. And as they're walking along, Richard notices something about Frank he never noticed before, because he thinks to himself often, Frank's pretty clumsy. But then he realizes the reason that Frank's clumsy is because as they're walking along in the woods, Frank is never looking down where he's putting his feet. And he says to him, I just noticed this, Frank, you stumble a lot. How many of you stumble? He says, you keep stumbling. Why? I'm just curious, why don't you look where you put your feet when you're walking? Why don't you look down? It's a lot safer. Frank, perfect sense to Frank, says, well, I don't like looking down on the ground. Richard says, what? I don't like looking down on the ground. Well, what in the name of God? Why wouldn't you want to look down on the ground? Frank says, because I've never seen a shadow of my body that looks anything like the way my body actually looks. I've never seen a shadow that looks anything like what I think I look like. Those shadows are big, they're fat, they're long, they're round, they're misshapen. That's not I, and I don't want to see it. Do you understand the story? If you don't relax, you're going to have a stroke. Now, what do you think of somebody who says, I don't want to look down because I don't like seeing shadows that don't resemble my nearly perfect form? And everybody thinks their form is nearly perfect. Even people that, if I'm always thinking about my form, do I not worship it? Do I not? Is Frank his shadow? That would be silly, wouldn't it? But he doesn't want to see it. Because when he sees it, he has a negative experience. How can Frank have a negative experience looking at his own shadow? Unless in that consciousness called Frank, there's something that is already shaped exactly what that shape should look like, and anything that misses the mark is to be avoided at all costs. Yes or no? So what's his experience? Is his experience of the shadow on the ground, or is his experience a consciousness that already knows in advance of anything that goes before him or behind him how it's supposed to be? That's the real answer, isn't it? Are you the shadows of yourself that you see? Are you the shadows of yourself that you see? Do you ever walk outside and you see your shadow? Oh God, that's what it shouldn't look like that. Do you ever? Probably. Barbara. Let me find another angle to meet the sun. Cheer up, some of you. Your faces are so long they look like shadows. Look, how can I help you understand this? Frank's not the shadow he doesn't want to see. You are not the experience of yourself you don't want to have. Because your experience is a shadow. It's a shadow of an unconscious nature that you don't understand is a shadow because you're so used to looking and seeing it, and it doesn't match what it should be, who you think you should be, that the only thing you know how to do is summarily not look. Avoid the experience. When the experience is what? Is the experience of the shadow? Is that my experience of the shadow? What's the experience? Myself. Isn't it? I have to know you understand that before I go on. Now let's see down to earth as best we can whether or not that's true. Would you please bring up the image that I've asked you to bring up? What do you see on your screen in the room and wherever you are? What do you see? I see a prism. That's a prism. Back in the 60s, you would trip for hours. Wow. Look at all that light. Where did that come from? I don't know. Well, let's smoke some more. We'll figure it out. A prism. What a fascinating study that is. And you'll see why it's fascinating. On your left side, you see what? You see light. Just regular old white light. Which, by the way, everything is white light. It's not this. You look up and see the sun yellow because our atmosphere is polluted. There's dust and all kinds of particles in our atmosphere. The colors you see all have to do with the particulates that reflect that back. The sky isn't, this is going to break your heart, it's not actually blue. Yeah. So in comes this light into the prism, yes or no? Now, fascinating that when light comes into a prism, when light enters anything, so light is active, isn't it? Whew, I'm like 4 years old. Whew, see the light coming into the prism? This is how I have to talk to you. Come, see the light? Comes in. And what does it come into? Something that as it comes into it, the prism impedes the progress of that light. Something passive meets something active, and what is passive impedes the entrance, the speed, literally impedes the speed of that light. And as it impedes the speed of that light by certain laws called refraction, that light that is white only coming in suddenly takes on the 7 major colors. All of the colors are actually there streaming out of that prism. So it comes in one form and it leaves another. Comes in an undivided condition that produces all that consciousness will ever be aware of, and then out of that consciousness, out of that prism, which represents consciousness, out of that prism comes what? All the colors of the rainbow. All the colors of my experience. But when I am sitting here and suddenly here comes this event, what I call an event. What we call events are momentary states of awareness of a disturbance that has taken place because something has impeded the will of heaven. In comes this will, and it strikes something that by its nature impedes the physicality, impedes energy. So when it does, suddenly there is an impasse, and that impasse, under certain laws, and I'm not clear enough to explain this, and it's not even important if I don't understand physically the fact that the analogy holds true. Suddenly, that white light is there in all of its spectrum, and spectrum are various degrees of vibration. So now I'm seeing all of these varying degrees of energy that I never knew even existed, because they've entered into, in this instance, a prism that suddenly reveals the substrata of all that's possible in that light. And those colors that you see on the screen, they cover the entire gamut of what the eye can see. And that's only what the eye can see because it's at the level of physicality. The fact is, it's almost a virtually endless spectrum of energies because the divine is endless. We just don't have the faculties for it. Are you still following me? What does that prism represent in what we're looking at so far when it comes to our will and the things that we do and choose to do? What does that prism represent? That prism casts different colors and shades of light, doesn't it? And yet everything that it's casting has come out of it. Where else would it be coming from? It's coming through the prism. So the prism is not separate from what it casts, but is a stage between that light and its manifestation in all of these colors. It's a spiritual place, if you want to use that word. That prism represents our presently our unconscious nature. And what happens? I look out at you and I see the color red. Do you ever see red when you see people? Do you understand what I'm saying? I see you, I'm angry before I even know why. Because I had a terrible experience with you 42 years ago. I don't even have to see you, I just think about you and I see green. Because you always had stuff I never got, it wasn't right. I look at the way the world is, I see black. How terrible can things be? So that I'm always looking out at the colors that are coming out of this consciousness, cast as they are onto a world around me, when the world around me isn't what is being cast. The world around me is the experience of myself spread out in the various spectrum of ways in which I find myself suffering because it doesn't match the colors that I think it should be. Do you see it? I'm trying very hard to teach you something. You're all of those colors and none of them at the same time. What we call all of this doing is because that ray comes out and I see this color and this color corresponds to that experience and that experience says, oh no, and that experience says, here's what you have to do to change that color. And then you spend your life trying to paint over something that can't be painted over. There's just the illusion somehow or other that when I react to this particular experience, think of experiences as different kinds of light. Aren't they? So here's this experience. I go, oh God, no, not that. And I fail to see that what I say, not that, is this. Isn't it? So what am I saying not that to? What am I denying? Have I lost you guys? What am I denying in that moment? The experience of myself. Because I don't have that color in me. I don't have that rage in me. I don't have that guilt in me. I don't have that hatred in me. I don't have that fear in me. And yet there it is. And the only thing I know to do, because that can't be me, is to recolor it. By a colorization kit for an unconscious nature, so that every experience can be redone by simply reimagining the way it's supposed to be. And the only thing that changes when I reimagine experience of myself is the self that believes it can actually escape itself through imagination. What do you make of this? What do you make of this? We react to the color we see, believing that the color we see is other than the prism, the consciousness, other than through which it came. Now, how long do you think a human being can spend in this life, in this body, believing that what they see outside of themselves is responsible for the experience of what they see? You can say, my whole life, my whole lifetime, lifetimes. One of the things we suffer over in unwanted moments is the inseparable struggle to do what? I'm always struggling to bring an end to a conflict, listen, that doesn't exist in the prism. Is that still on the screen for everybody out there? It does. The conflict's not in the prism, is it? Is the conflict in the prism? Or is the prism simply an instrument through which this light, in its infinite forms, requires that prism in order to express its infinite forms in time and space? So it needs the prism, it needs the consciousness in order for that light to have and assume all of the infinite possibilities that it is. And without that prism, there would be no one to know God. There would be no one to love the divine. Because there would be no one who sees the divine isn't these problems here. I don't like this color, get rid of that color, change that, paint that differently. There'd be no one there always trying to produce a moment that aligns with what they want. They would be aligned with everything they are being, listen, given to see and to be in that same moment. Before life asks you to do anything about some experience, it asks you to be aware of the source of that experience. You think you know the source because that consciousness points to something that it says is the wrong color. He's the wrong person. This is the wrong way. And then again, it isn't that this person or that circumstance is right. Everything that's acting on you is bringing up all the colors. The palette of the divine. That's what you are. Rumi says, the universe is not outside of you. Look inside of you. Everything you want, you are already that. Every color, every experience, you already are that. But this mind, in its fallen state, can't stand that it's not the way it thinks things should be, because it's already identified with, as a result of God knows what, that which it believes has to be in place. You cannot be like this, they can't be like that, otherwise I suffer. And all you're suffering from is the subsequent conflict inherent in an unconscious nature that never stops looking at the world around it, believing that what it sees is other than the eyes that behold it. That the will of heaven should be done on the will of earth is when a person begins to understand as best they can that we are the experience of what's happening. And we are the one within whom it is taking place. And we are the one, now listen, who, in quotes, will decide with free will whether or not we serve the revelation of the whole of that. What's the revelation of the whole of the prism? Please, just one more moment. What's the revelation of the whole of that image up there? Is it just the light coming in? No, that's crazy. It can't be just that, because you wouldn't even know it was there unless it was acting in something. So there's the whole of that, just that which it's coming into and that which it enters into. Is that the whole of it? That's not the whole of it. What's the whole of it? All three parts. Trinity. The whole is the awareness of the whole, not the individual parts cobbled together by a mind struggling to create something for itself. Let's bring up the last key lesson as a summary. Read along with me. Only complete action on our part has the power to teach us completely the one great lesson at the heart of what real life would have us learn. And what is it that real life would have us learn? That we are inseparable from the experience of the divine itself, even as it is manifested in time and space through the instruments it has created so that it can know itself in time and space. What does Isaiah say? You've been called to be my witness. You've been called to see that everything you see is me. He maketh the sun to shine on good and evil alike. What would take place inside of this consciousness? And by the way, as it takes place, if any of this gets in, and you can even struggle in the smallest way, do you know the entire system changes? Not this part changes, the whole thing changes, because now it is subservient to a completely different order of energy. Its will is no longer its own all the time. Now it understands to some extent, as best it can, that my choice in this moment isn't to do something about what you said. I can do that till the cows come home. It's changed nothing. My will in this moment is to try to get everybody to see things the way in the light I do. That's not my will. That belongs to an order of consciousness that I would never even know was there if it weren't for the divine light coming into that consciousness and gradually showing it how it takes every separate color as a separate experience, and that all of those separate experiences are in conflict with one another, and the only way to bring an end to that conflict is to be the whole of it. And you can't do that with thinking, can you? Do you know when real spiritual death begins? When you literally, truly, in the right meaning of the word, begin to do what Christ and every true spiritual teacher prescribes as the solution to this reoccurrence, this pain, this constant temporal torment, every moment another analysis, every moment another choice, every moment another struggle to accomplish what I imagine has to be done. That's called purgatory. You live in purgatory. You don't know you do. You suffer it, but you live in it without knowing it. The solution, the true promise, is the gradual awareness, the recognition of that. I get out of my chair. When I get out of my chair, I think to myself, I want to go in the kitchen. There's no you that said I want to go in the kitchen. There's no you that said I want to go in the kitchen. This body, something came into it, something was stirred, an appetite, a need. It says, get up, and now you know why you're getting up. You just got up. The horse and the carriage, they're moving along by themselves. The driver is an imagined driver until there's a relationship, a communication from the whole of that understanding. Nothing can change. And it doesn't change because you change it. It changes because you die to trying to change things. That's how it changes, which is why nobody changes. Because I'm not about to let things change that I need, that I have to control. But what if I actually realize everything that you've just been told? That I is a fantasy. That I belongs to Legion, incidentally. That I is Legion. It is Mammon. It is never-endingly trying to deal with whatever it is that has disturbed it, and it's looking at its own nature and saying, that shouldn't be that way. So what would be the exercise here to bring an end to this talk? Anybody? Be a witness, but I want something more than that. How many of you feel, I'll show you, go, do, fix, work, no, yes or no? Before you do, see. Remember we talked about deliberate? Before you do, see. And if you just pause deliberately, what you'll see is that something has come along and literally has you in its hands, and it's saying, do this, go there, say this, work this out, think about this, struggle, struggle, struggle. And as you see that, you will know that is not the whole of you. It is just a momentary relationship, and a mistaken one, with a level of consciousness that has no awareness of itself, and now you have awareness of it. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we move to the Q&A session of our class, I have just a couple of announcements for the group. One of them is an achievement of some sort that I just want to draw our attention to. As you may know, and I certainly know some of you online know this, Guy has a YouTube channel, and we work very hard at promoting Guy's work on that channel. And just this past week, Guy's YouTube channel reached a very important threshold, and that is we now have over 10,000 followers on Guy's YouTube channel.
Give them a moment to, yes. That was pathetic.
That is a threshold we've been working towards for a while now, and we're
4,000 years, John, and that's all the applause we got.
And those of you online, thank you for subscribing, and if you don't, if we aren't, please consider doing so. In our meeting yesterday, we were talking about this. Guy's YouTube channel is a great resource of material. It has, I believe, over 1,300 videos that we have archived there, long and short, from full classes and full talks that Guy has given over the years, to shorter excerpts from them, to Q&As that he has done on Saturdays and at different times with individual students, and even short, just 1-minute clips. And it archives our live classes that we have been now doing for several years. So YouTube and all of our social media platforms are ones worthwhile to subscribe to and use in our spiritual work. And if you don't know how to get there, an easy way to do so is guyfinley.org/YouTube or guyfinley.org/Instagram, etc. And we have links that will take you to those various sites very, very easily. So big news, and we are proud of that. Second announcement is just a reminder both to the students here in the room and those of you online that our next class this coming Wednesday is another in our series of Deep Dive Wednesday classes with Guy. Again, Deep Dive Wednesday is where the material that Guy will present and we will talk and learn with him about is the material that we have asked him ourselves, that we want a deeper understanding of. And so students online, students in the room have been submitting topics, questions, concerns, quotations and things from Guy and other masters that they want to understand something a little more about that. And so that's what we'll be doing this Wednesday. And as always, you're invited to submit further topics for discussion. Just go to our contact form on our website at guyfinley.org/contact, and that's where we gather these material for our future classes. But Deep Dive Wednesday this coming October 23rd. That was it, Guy, for our announcements. You have anything you'd like to say before we get to our discussion?
Yeah. You can't come to a conscious, let alone an impersonal life by trying to have an impersonal life. You can't become conscious or awakened by trying to become conscious or awakened. This idea of being a true witness is the natural expression of a gradual incorporation of your understanding with the experience that gives rise to that understanding. Christ alludes to it, every true teacher. Christ said, it isn't I who doeth the works, it is my Father that doeth the works. You look at that prism, you see that light coming in, you see the prism and the rays of the different manifestations of that light. You see the vine and the branch and the fruit. You see the Trinity. We don't see anything other than the color we want or don't want. That is primarily your whole life, mine as it may be. You react to a color that came out of this consciousness, that the consciousness that is expressing, that is itself part of what is coming out of it. It says, I don't want that to be me. And it's not until you actually get to the place where you realize how useless all of that suffering is, trying to ensure that your life goes on the way you want it to go on, and that people remain the way you need them to be, and everything fits that little puzzle called this pain that I'm in, till all of that is seen as absolutely useless, so that you begin to die to anything that urges you to engage in that struggle. Then the struggle dies by itself, because the light has proven the need for the end of you as you have known yourself. More than that, I can't say.
So we now begin our discussion. For those of you online, you are invited to join in. Those of you on GoToWebinar have the opportunity to talk directly to Guy. Just click the hand icon on your control panel, and then I'll unmute you and you unmute yourself. Those of you on Facebook and YouTube, you can send in written questions, and we're monitoring those sites, and those will be relayed to me as well. And again, students in the room, anytime you feel moved or wish to come up to speak at the microphone, please just walk this way, and I will move out of the way. I'm going to begin with a written question by Veronica. This came in during the week from our website, and so we'll start with this question. Veronica says, hello, Guy. I received an impression of being large and whole, undefined without any physical images or border, like the air. Can you speak about this state?
Great. We human beings are a very curious, that's a euphemism, a very curious lot. On one hand, you are created to not just be made in the image of the divine, but to know everything about the various images of the divine, so that you never mistake yourself for any one or the other of them. So on one hand, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, that which is endlessly expansive heaven. It wasn't anything. It was an idea about something that never ends, and the earth, that which is always ending, that which is always contracting. So here are these two originally opposing seemingly forces, but created from the same source, wanting to be expansive. I want to know. I want to get out there. I want to be big. On the other hand, there's something inside of me that never stops limiting the experience by thinking about it. That's a conflict, isn't it? But it's not your conflict. It's built into this creation. So until I understand, you know what, and she's saying it, I had this impression she wouldn't be writing about it. It was pretty cool. For a moment, I kind of felt myself to have no limits at all. What happened? Because now I want to be the one to whom this happened. So that the whole of this talk was so that you could see every moment has all of these colors in it, and if you pick one, you're a fool. So if I pick one, I limit the whole possibility of what's on the end of the rainbow, the pot of gold, the pot of gaining real understanding. I limit it, and I don't know I'm limiting it because it feels so important for me to do. And that's what you have to see. Because the more you see that, what's going to happen? See, are you not always talking about your experiences? Come on, give it up. all day long. Yada, 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 this experience, that experience. And if nothing's actually happening in the moment, I'll find something in the past to talk about. And if I'm not talking about the past, I'll think about something in the future that might threaten what I'm already identified with in the past. Yada, 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 talk, talk, talk. And what is all of that talk doing? It's giving me the sense of experience. What if, and one day you'll understand this, what if when in comes this light, out comes one of these colors, one of these vibrations. Do you understand color is vibration, it's energy? Out comes this energy, this experience of myself. Not what I blame for that. I'm experiencing some aspect of my own consciousness, something God gave me to see so that I could see Him. And here's that experience. What would happen if finally one day out comes this shaft of brown? You know, like, I hate this shaft of brown. What would happen if out comes that color and you understand that's part of what's coming out? That's in there. What if I didn't talk to myself about that experience? What if I just let it be what it was? And if you did, you know what you would see? You would see the shift never stops. Like a kaleidoscope. What do you think a kaleidoscope represents in human terms? It's one respect in which we can begin to see that something is wheeling and wheeling and wheeling, and that with every turn of the wheel, another separate set of colors and experiences is born of that experience, of that relationship. So that's that.
Hello, my name is Terry. I just had a question, Guy. It's pretty simple, but you know, the colors of our experience, the colors of that prism coming out, you know, so here's this mind that brings up something, then it identifies with that very same thing. Is that the same as perception? Those colors, it's not the same?
No, for one thing, Terry, that the colors are not separate from the prism from out of which they come.
Right.
That's being. That's being. Doing is acting towards what has come out of the prism as separate from the prism so that you can control what you see. We're talking about being. Being requires something coming into it in this world so that it can manifest all of the qualities that that particular being has in that moment. And with every revelation of some of these colors that come out, instead of thinking to himself, that's me, I'm like that, that's a good color, that's a bad color, I'll be free of this shape, this character one day, understanding you will never be free. Can the prism ever be free of the colors that come out of it?
No.
That's your answer.
Okay, all right.
You'll have to ponder it for sure.
Hi, I'm Deborah. So I thought this was kind of a high talk. I mean, it was up there, and I struggled with it. But last night I was talking to John, and I said, in relationship to this talk, that there's a nature in me that's always struggling with what it sees. I'm in the wrong field. There is never going to be a resolution to struggling with the colors that are passing through me, if I'm saying this right.
Close enough.
Yeah, and there's a whole nother field that we're meant to be in, not struggling there. That's the best I can say.
That's all right, that's fine. We're blind to the whole because our favorite feeling is the part. And the favorite feeling is the part never ends because I'm always taking part in trying to change the part I don't want. It just goes on. You see it, one day you won't want to change what you see, even though you'll know what you see should change. You'll understand. It isn't I who doeth the work. It is the Father. It is the light that makes good and evil alike. It comes into this consciousness. It reveals, that's what Christ said, I am the light of this world. I am the light that reveals the consciousness of human beings to themselves. I show the human being what lies latent in them so that through that light they can begin to go through the process of ceasing to be the will of not wanting, instead the will of accepting what they're being given to see as the whole of themselves.
My name is Patricia. That was such a clear, seeing the prism, the light going through the prism, it was such a clear vision of we are the image of God. I've never saw it so clearly as that picture. But I was wondering, and then we just want to take one or two colors.
Yeah, that's it.
And our life is one or two colors at a time.
I have my palette, you have yours, and don't you bother me.
Yeah. I only like blues.
I know your colors, believe me.
So anyhow, though, I was wondering when you were talking, maybe you can't say this in just a few words, but I was wondering how karma comes in, because we do make individual choices. I guess that's answering my own question. And the karma does follow.
Karma is inseparable from the desire that creates it. Desire doesn't exist apart from wanting or not wanting to change the experience of the colors of my consciousness.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Chris. So I think this talk is the culmination of the last several talks, the one on rushing, the one on what it means to have your own attention, and this one, free will. For my whole life, all I've done has been pushed here and there, rushing to get somewhere down the road where I don't even know where I can rest or not be me, who knows. But then the work that we do here is to begin to have our own attention so that we can see where this nature is pushing us, where we're residing. Because if we can see, then we begin to have free will, to have a different kind of life. And the other day I was in the market. On Thursdays I go shopping after I visit my family, and by the time I get there it's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I'm tired, I want to go home, it's an hour drive. So I have my list, and I'm
How many of you can see Chris powering through the market? Yeah.
Yeah. And but I've been working since Wednesday, really consciously working to have my own attention. And whatever you do, any exercise or intention you make, it always produces rewards. Not that I stop rushing, but I begin to see where it is that I'm rushing. And when I got to the checkout stand, and I was putting my stuff on, and the man who was checking me out, he had a little bit of his own attention, and he greeted me. And as soon as he greeted me, I remembered my exercise, and I could feel the inner state, and I could consciously put my groceries on and meet him where he was. And for a moment, there was awareness, his and mine. He called me out because he wasn't in a rush. He was just doing his job and being pleasant. And I could say so much more. There's one other thing. Vernon Howard told a story, and the only thing I remember about it was he talked about two rivers, this river of rushing, of being pushed, but that we can move out of that river into a different river. And when we have our own attention, when we work, we can move into a different level of consciousness. Aren't we lucky that we know this stuff? I mean, that we get to hear these great ideas.
We have 2 hands in the queue and a written question. Let me go to one of the hands in the queue. So we'll hear from Fiona. So Fiona, let me unmute you here. Good morning.
Hello, Guy. Hello, everyone.
Fiona. So good to hear.
Chris, yes, we are so lucky we hear this. That image of the prism is so clean, seeing those forces working through. And we are the same, but of course, but not the way that a mind can see. So the mind can see that triangle working through, colors, beautiful. But when it comes to biology, well, we're more than biology, but those forces were like little weather systems that, depending on what's going on and things that are acting on us, will come out in a surprising way that we could never work out. Just want to go to an example. The other night, okay, I thought about these shoes that I wanted to wear, and I love these shoes. They're just great and fit me in every way and just perfect. Okay. And then I thought, I lent them to my daughter and realized I didn't remember her giving them back. And then I realized, and I went to look, couldn't find them. I thought, oh my gosh, total devastation hit me that I don't have these shoes.
Oh no.
And I'm seeing that was just, and really seeing it made me feel even worse in a way, because I kind of let myself feel that overwhelm of tragedy that I don't have these shoes. You know, as if I'd rather my house burnt down than lose these shoes.
Yeah, spiritual giant that I am. Where are my shoes?
Yeah. It really did surprise me, and when I let myself really see it and really feel it, it was more like, it was even more, oh my gosh, just letting it be there, this kind of tornado working through me. Anyway, lots of other things to see, but
I get it. And you know, Fiona, I was scribbling on a piece of paper late last night in bed. And I was thinking about this idea of the fear of God, what they have translated as the fear of God. Those words don't mean that you are thunderstruck by what God may or may not do to you. It means that in even the moment you just described, on one hand, I'm shocked at what I see about myself, but on another hand, I'm in awe of the fact that I never saw that before, and there's a gratitude in that seeing that could never take place if I remained as I am. Then you have a right relationship to the revelation. So much of your work is about a right relationship with revelation. Because the right revelation and the relationship with it is always thy will, not mine. Always. That's what free will is. Free will is surrendering the false will, because you understand that you are already a part of and intended to be a participant, an instrument of the divine. Not separate from the divine, but realizing the divine is always acting into and through you and showing you something of its qualities, its characters on the other side of this consciousness that then resists or is attracted, mistakenly separate from what it sees. Good, Fiona. On we go, John.
Hello, I'm Ellen. Well, this was an epic talk, and it just pulled together so many things we've been studying for years. And specifically, it gave a deeper understanding of identification,
Yes.
and the kingdom of heaven is within. The identification is Ellen wants to grab onto every different color that comes out, whether it's in a positive way or a negative way.
And that's where all the limitation comes from, because she's just taken into one little offshoot. But the kingdom of heaven is within. Turn around. I think what you're saying is, instead of being pulled further down the line of division, we're meant to consciously turn back within ourselves where everything is originating. Well, it's actually originating from the divine, but then it comes through this. And if we could see everything that's going on in here, we would have a closer relationship with the divine.
You would understand the divine is the source, we are the instrument, and there's the expression, and the three of them together makes the whole.
Yes, yes. And that it's within. If we could see what's within instead of being pulled out, we would have the taste of that. And I just want to quickly say I had several experiences right after the talk that showed me that Prism. I had a number of emotional reactions to things that happened, and I could actually see that it was the emotion was like a color that Ellen wanted to identify with and become that color.
Yes.
And that there was an ability for her, through awareness, to just stay more within herself. And then an example of that was I got up to speak, and John got up and he signaled me that he wanted to get up and read the question. And of course, there was a color that shot out, but I was able to stay more within myself and just see it wasn't personal. You know, that he's just doing what he needs to be doing. And I don't know, I can see the potential here of not being dragged off into all these suffering emotions and just staying within the whole as best she can.
What if I didn't have to create my character? Do you understand? You're always protecting some character that you don't even know you have. What if I actually understood? Why would I limit myself to any one character, wanted or not?
We'll go next to Nick in the queue, and then I do have a written question as well. But Nick, we'll unmute you. Good morning, Nick. You're on.
Morning, John. Thank you. Good morning, Guy. You know, you started off the day and you said that your first thought or reaction is really a half a second after your unconscious reaction. I believe you said something to that effect.
Something like that?
And yeah. And I've often wondered, Guy, about that in my thought. I thought that my first thought is in reality a mirror image, if you will, or a reaction to the last quote unquote thought of my unconscious nature, you know? And I think we were saying the same things there.
Well, I don't know what you just said.
Okay. Well, my first thought is really a mirror image or a reaction to the last thought of my unconscious nature.
If you're saying, if try not to, I don't know if you're moving a headset around or something, Nick, but it's right there in my ear. If you're saying that thought follows thought, like a bubble of water follows the stream it's in, that's a fact. And there's no one there. There's just that movement that we're identified with, and because of that identification, cause that movement to keep going, which never ends the way we try to end it. If that's what you're saying, yes, we are on the same page.
Well, if I may continue, Guy?
Yeah, please.
You mentioned at the beginning your first thought that we experience is a reaction to our half a second previous unconscious reaction.
Right, but that reaction is not a thought, Nick.
Okay, right. Okay.
All right.
Yes, thank you for that. I understand. Okay. I did put quotes and thoughts here, our thoughts in the word in quotes.
Yeah, no.
But so I think I was just on the same page and understanding what you were referring to, and I was just trying to confirm that. And you talk about being an actor is moving into stillness. Moving into stillness, which is trying not to change things, and which also could be said learning how to suffering yourself, or being aware of all three parts without judgment, is what I'm wanting to understand. And I'll just close, if I may say, my unconscious nature, and somebody, I think Ellen just touched on it in a little bit, is Nick needs to give himself meaning, and those all become idols. Even if focusing on an individual color might be an idol. And the way I have to use my personality, I think I have to use my personality to win. Those are all idols, and just trying to be aware of that, sir. That's all.
Yeah. My answer is always the same. You've had some glimpses, you have some intuition. Keep nourishing that, Nick, at all costs, that first. Let me understand myself. Let that be the first impulse. Shouldn't be to try to resolve. The first impulse should be to stay and listen, not in a silence that I create, but to enter into a silence that reveals all of the movement within it. And there's a difference. You don't create silence. You don't create stillness. It's there. It is the summation of what comes in, what it comes into, and what comes out. That's what stillness is, something that is undivided.
I have a written question from Jordan, and I think we can end the online portion because there's one more written question. Okay, thank you, Kate.
Kate, fire this man.
Here's a question from Jordan. He says, I'm in a bit of a struggle at the moment, which I'm trying to decide, is it useless or not? I'm trying to not identify with everything, my career, my passion, my love of sports, bodybuilding, etc. I'm trying to be an impersonal observer over everything in my life, which is making everything worse because I have to have 24/7 attention to do this. I'm only 24 years young. I can't keep doing this. I have to stop throwing the spiritual baby out with the bathwater, and I need to find some sort of balance because this is torture.
I'm just letting some thoughts pool together, Jordan, because there's no answer to your torment other than you have to realize that you're busy inflicting all of this on yourself, and to take something out of what Nick just asked me a moment ago. He said, my unconsciousness. It's not my unconsciousness. That's the deception. I don't like what's in. How many of you don't like what's in your unconsciousness? That's what unconsciousness is. There's no separate unconscious nature. There's an unconscious nature that has over time painted itself in a number of different ways so that it can make its way through the unconscious experience of being in conflict with everything that it does. How do you explain, who wants to explain to Jordan? I'll give you my chair. That the only way that conflict comes to an end is when you see there's no end to it. Everything I do is to transcend the conflict I'm in. He just said it. He just spelled it out. He has an advantage already. 24 years old, pretty good. Most people at 24 don't think they're a wreck. They're busy designing life for other people and their own life. When you see that this nature, the only thing it can design is more pain for itself because it tries to escape the experience of itself. And where he's right now is I have to escape this experience of myself, but I don't know how to do it and I can't stand the experience of myself. Well, what happens at that point? Because I can list, as he did, I've got all these things going on. Trying not to identify with my career, my passion, which I think is other than what I'm identified with. What are you passionate about, Chris? I'm passionate about anything that I'm passionate about in the moment where I'm reminded this is important. That's what becomes my passion, is whatever it seems to be the most important thing in the moment. Yes? Now the I that says this is the most important thing, it's not there when something more important comes along. It's just shoved out of the way by a more important color, a more important character that I have to deal with. And then when you see you're on a rotisserie grill and you're cooking your own goose every single day by living that way, one day you say, you know what? I have to stop this, but I don't know how to stop it. It stops when you see it is ceaseless. When you see there is no way out with thought, with any reaction, with anything you're ever going to paint in the future or change the color of the past, when all that's inescapable to you, you will at last have taken a step out of a nature that continues to create itself and that sense of self that Jordan's talking about. Have you ever said that? I can't keep doing this. Have you? Let's say it out loud so he hears. I can't stop doing this. And then what do? I just do a little more. Because that's the solution. So I'm a worm. I never stop wiggling. I squirm. I'm always engaged with some negotiation, with some kind of problem I've got where I'm going to change this tomorrow, mostly. I'll deal with it a little bit today, and then whatever I do to deal with this problem today becomes the can that's kicked down the road. It isn't a can that's kicked down the road. It's an unconscious nature kicking its sense of self down the road so it can deal with it later, and it can't. Let it be encouraging to you, Jordan. Where you are is known. Now you have to know it.
Here's a written question from Susanna.
Don't you cry.
She says, yesterday I lost my patience with an older friend. I noticed this situation reminded me of my mother's controlling ways. My rage was so strong that I had a sense of being finally powerful. What should I have done? Sat in the anger and not done anything and contemplate my anger?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Doe, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop of golden sun. At the beginning, I saw my will was not my own. Now, I never knew that my anger wasn't my will because my anger was my will. That's how I exert myself. That's how I make sure that people understand. Don't tread on me. Don't mess with me. And that's always been the fallback position. Now, in terms of the prism, something happens, something comes into me, your tone, the way you're looking at me, all of that comes in, and immediately when it comes in, out of this prism, and by the way, you can think, if you want to, of the term prism or prison. If you don't understand the nature of the prism in the moment, you are in its prison. So out comes a character. She described it, didn't she? And she even said it reminded me of my mother's controlling ways. My rage was so strong. So suddenly, I see this in myself. I know, and she's made it clear, that what I'm seeing wasn't appropriate, shouldn't be there, but lo and behold, there it was. Why? Because I don't know what else to do when I have the reaction to the content of my own character. I don't know what else to do. That's all I know to do. So she says, what should I have done? Sat in the anger and not done anything and contemplated it? I want so badly to explain this. You still believe you have choice. I spent an hour explaining to you that all of your choices are an aberration of a level of consciousness that believes it's other than what it's trying to control. Isn't that what you do all the time? Make choices. And what are all of the choices for? To deal with a conflict of some kind. Now, it could be conflict with you, or it could be conflict with myself. That's what self-judgment is, isn't it? Isn't judging myself a form of conflict where should be this way, but I wasn't that way? Isn't that what judgment is? So I believe I make the choice to judge myself. You don't choose to judge yourself. Judgment's built into a consciousness that always resists the revelation of a character that it doesn't think it should be. That's what judgment is. So, Susanna, the answer is always the same answer. I was going to say for another 10,000 years, I don't know exactly how much longer. It's the same answer. Let me not try to figure out what to do with what I see. Instead, let me be free to see everything I'm given. End of story. That's where freedom is. That's my will. My will is to be free to see what I'm given to see. If I will accept that and see that, everything that needs to be done will be either dismissed as a false action, something that is the continuation of this character, or it'll be seen as completely useless and it'll be dropped on the spot. And if it means I suffer myself, so be it. So be it. I see things all the time in myself. But the difference is that I will not suffer for the sake of that consciousness. I will suffer that consciousness for the sake of that which reveals it to me. And there's a significant difference in that. Do you understand me? Eric's coming up. John wants to come up. And Kate's coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
My name is Eric. If you identify with one color, you will despise that. I had that worked out really nicely. You will love that one color and despise
the other,
all the other colors.
There you go.
This is going to be a weird segue, but
we're with you.
Sometimes when I like to find old 70s songs that are underrated, and sometimes I'll come across lyrics where it's like, oh, it seems to me Rumi, you mentioned Rumi.
Oh, yeah.
Rumi could have written that. And there's one lyric that I thought sublime. The guy said, let's see if I can say it without breaking down. I think it went perfectly with this talk, I thought. When you fall in love, you're in love with everyone in any place your lover happens to be. And that all has to go together to make it complete. And that's, when Rumi talks, or what he wrote, talks about love, the beloved, it's not sentimental. It's not the sentimental kind of love. The sentimental would be love of one of the parts, love of a part, instead of love of the beloved. You know, it's so hard to put into words.
No, you struggle.
In a weird way, the love of the beloved, the love of the part is the sentimental.
Yes.
Whereas seeing all those parts at once, there's the beloved.
There's the beloved.
And in an ironic, weird way, you're given back, you do love the parts. Not in a sentimental way, but because you know that it's the beloved.
Because it's part of it.
Because it's part of the beloved.
I was hoping Eric would sing it for us. I'll sing something. One of those old songs. One of my very favorites. I will lay down my heart and I'll feel the power, but you won't. No, you won't. 'Cause I can't make you love me if you don't. I can't make your heart feel the things that it won't.
It's been a long time since we've had music here. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate. I mentioned in our Friday study group that some months ago I lost a ring that my mother had given to me, and then out of the blue found it. And this was connected to something Patricia had said in her talk at the time on Friday night. There was this moment there was a big moment of emotion, but there was also underneath of it an emptiness. And I was puzzled by that. And I just want to try and connect that experience with a couple of things that I wrote down from the talk. So, Guy, did you say karma is inseparable from the desire that creates it?
Yep.
And it got me thinking, like, desire actually requires a consequence to it that's going to play out in time in order to balance it, I think. And what was interesting about like that experience, like I didn't know the desire that when it was going before me up to the point where the ring was lost. I didn't know that there was an identification with it, so to speak, until it was lost. And now karma brings up that desire for me to see. And I guess I'll struggle my way through this, and if I say something.
Attachment is latent desire.
Mm-hmm.
Attachment is latent desire. It's quiet, it sits down there, you don't know it until suddenly something makes it kinetic, something triggers it, and now it's no longer latent. Now the dependency and my identification is evident there.
And what was interesting was then another desire was revealed as well, the desire to suffer over the loss of this object. And at the moment...
I call that not postpartum depression, post-depression partum.
Oh, you're so good with play on words. It's just interesting to see the layers and levels within this, what seemingly was one event, and yet there is all of this kind of going on unconsciously, and karma is going to play it all out. I mean, karma, let's see. Yeah, of course, I'm still working with this.
I understand.
But there's one other thing I want to bring in, which is that you said the only time conflict comes to an end is when you see there's no end to it. And that's kind of, all of that mechanism is just sort of going on when there's no attention or awareness of it. And it doesn't matter if it's a desire for something quote unquote good or desire for something quote unquote bad, who would think that they desire suffering?
No one would think that. But when you desire freedom, as imagined, you're desiring suffering. You can't separate them.
Right, right. Okay. That helps. Thanks.
For every action, there is an what? So for every want, there is a what? That's why you can't serve two masters.
Hello, my name is John. So a crisis occurs when something that we're very attached to gets taken away from us. And a crisis can last for days or weeks. And I was thinking about that word. And Churchill was reputed to have said, "Never let a crisis go to waste." In this world, a crisis isn't allowed to go to waste whenever the world uses a crisis to acquire more control over the populace, let's say. But in light of this talk, a crisis can be an opportunity to relinquish control, to
the illusion.
Yes,
illusion
control. That's right. I should have went control. The attempt to replace one color with another, as it were, one experience with another.
You coming up, Paul? Oh man.
Bad news, Paul. Good morning. My name is Paul.
He needs a little help with his esteem, okay?
It's true. So Jordan's comment about trying to be an impersonal observer and the 24/7, and it's driving me nuts, basically, moved me to share this because I shared a similar sentiment with you several years ago in an online.
And I thought I got rid of you then.
I know, and I keep coming back. I don't know my problem. And Guy had a great response that, you know, I'm still working on to this day, obviously, but you did a play on the great Tom Hanks line in A League of Their Own. There's no crying in baseball. And you told me there's no trying in spirituality.
Yes.
So just wanted to share that.
Strike three, goodbye.